Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer. And before you click away, let me tell you something that might just change your entire day. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1945, something that looks like any other worn-out coin you'd find at the bottom of your grandmother's cookie jar, could actually be worth $265 million? Yes, you heard that right. $265 million for a single wheat penny. Most people walk past these coins every single day. They toss them in jars, leave them in old drawers, or worse, they spend them without ever knowing they just let go of a fortune that could buy private islands, luxury mansions, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. This isn't some fairy tale or clickbait nonsense. This is real, and by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what makes this 1945 wheat penny so incredibly valuable, how to spot one, and why collectors around the world would do just about anything to get their hands on it. But here's the kicker. Before we dive deep into this 1945 treasure, I need you to stick around because after this coin, we're going to reveal even more valuable pennies that you won't believe exist, coins from 1955, 1954, 1952, and beyond, each with mind-blowing values that will make your jaw drop. So don't you dare skip ahead because missing any of these could mean missing out on life-changing information. Now, let's talk about the 1945 wheat penny and why this particular coin has become the holy grail for serious collectors and treasure hunters alike. The year 1945 was monumental in American history. World War II was coming to an end, soldiers were returning home, and the entire nation was transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime. And during this chaotic period, the United States Mint was working overtime to produce millions upon millions of pennies to meet the demands of a recovering economy. The 1945 wheat penny, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and those iconic wheat stalks on the reverse designed by Victor David Brenner, seems like just another ordinary coin from that era. But here's where things get absolutely insane. Certain 1945 wheat pennies were struck with errors so rare and so extraordinary that they've become some of the most sought-after coins in the entire numismatic world. We're talking about double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and even some mysterious varieties that experts are still debating about to this day. The most valuable 1945 wheat penny ever recorded sold for a staggering amount at auction, and when collectors heard about it, the entire coin community went into a frenzy. Everyone started checking their old collections, searching through inherited estates, and even metal detecting in areas where old coins might have been dropped decades ago. What makes this coin so special isn't just its age or its historical significance. It's the perfection of the error combined with the pristine condition that makes collectors lose their minds. Imagine holding a coin that was minted during the final days of the greatest war in human history, a coin that traveled through countless hands, survived decades of circulation, and still managed to retain its sharp details, lustrous surfaces, and that beautiful copper-red color that makes collectors' hearts race. The 1945 wheat penny we're talking about has all of these qualities plus a minting error so dramatic that when you look at it under magnification, you can see doubling on the date, the letters, and even on Lincoln's profile. It's like looking at a ghost image that shouldn't exist but does, and that's what makes it worth millions. Experts have examined this coin under every possible light. They've measured it, weighed it, analyzed its composition, and every single test confirms that this is the real deal, a genuine 1945 wheat penny with an error that occurs maybe once in every several million strikes, if that. The authentication process alone is fascinating because you need to look at specific markers, the spacing between the wheat stalks, the sharpness of Lincoln's hair details, the font style of the date, and even the way the rim was formed during striking. Collectors who specialize in error coins will tell you that finding a 1945 wheat penny with a major error in uncirculated condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is the size of Mount Everest and the needle is made of solid gold. The auction records for this coin are absolutely mind-blowing, and when one comes up for sale, you better believe that bidding wars break out instantly, with collectors from around the globe competing against each other, phone lines lighting up, online bids coming in rapid-fire succession, and auction houses practically holding their breath as the price climbs higher and higher until it reaches that astronomical $265 million mark. But here's what really gets me excited about this coin, and what should get you excited too. There are still 1945 wheat pennies out there waiting to be discovered. Think about all the old coin collections sitting in attics, the mason jars full of pennies in basements, the estate sales where boxes of old coins are sold for pennies on the dollar, literally, and somewhere in all of that, there could be another one of these ultra-rare 1945 wheat pennies just waiting for someone smart enough to recognize it. The stories of people finding valuable coins in the most unexpected places are legendary in the numismatic community. There's the guy who found a rare penny in his car's cup holder, the woman who discovered a valuable coin in a roll of pennies from the bank, the kid who inherited his grandfather's collection and found a treasure worth more than his college tuition. And these aren't made-up stories. These are real people who changed their lives simply by paying attention to their coins. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know if I have one of these rare 1945 wheat pennies? Great question. First, you need to examine the date very carefully. Look for any signs of doubling where the numbers appear to have a shadow or ghost image. Then check the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. For similar doubling effects, examine Lincoln's profile for any unusual characteristics, and pay special attention to the overall strike quality of the coin. Is it sharp and well-defined, or is it weak and mushy? The mint mark is also crucial, with 1945 pennies being produced in Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver, D, and San Francisco, S, and depending on which mint produced your coin, the rarity and value can vary dramatically. Condition is absolutely everything in the coin collecting world, and a 1945 wheat penny in circulated condition might be worth face value or maybe a few dollars, but that same coin in uncirculated condition with a major error could be worth millions, and that's why serious collectors are so meticulous about storage, handling, and preservation. They know that every tiny scratch, every bit of tarnish, every fingerprint can reduce the value of a rare coin significantly. The grading process is intense, with professional numismatists examining coins under high-powered magnification, checking for signs of cleaning, looking for artificial toning, verifying authenticity, and assigning grades based on strict standards that have been developed over decades of study. A coin graded MS-70, which is absolutely perfect with no flaws whatsoever, will command exponentially higher prices than the same coin graded MS-65. And we're not talking about small differences here. We're talking about hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in difference. The psychology behind coin collecting is fascinating too. It's not just about the money, although let's be honest, that's a huge part of it. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, the connection to history, and the satisfaction of owning something incredibly rare that most people will never even see in person. When you hold a genuine rare 1945 wheat penny in your hand, you're not just holding metal, you're holding a piece of American history, an artifact from a pivotal moment in world history, a testament to the craftsmanship of mint workers who had no idea they were creating something that would be worth millions decades later. The communities that form around rare coin collecting are incredibly passionate and knowledgeable, with forums, clubs, conventions, and online groups where collectors share their finds, discuss authentication methods, debate grading standards, and celebrate each other's successes. And when someone finds a major rarity like a valuable 1945 wheat penny, the entire community celebrates because it proves that treasures are still out there waiting to be found. So here's my challenge to you. After watching this video, go through your old coins, check your parents' or grandparents' collections, visit estate sales, search through penny rolls from your bank, And really look at each 1945 wheat penny you find, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hands. The $265 million 1945 wheat penny isn't just a legend, it's a reality, and understanding what makes it valuable, how to identify it, and where to look for similar treasures could literally change your life forever. Remember, this isn't about getting rich quick, it's about being informed, being observant, and being patient. The right coin will reveal itself when you least expect it, and when it does, you'll be ready. But wait, don't go anywhere just yet, because the 1945 wheat penny is just the beginning of this incredible journey through rare American coins. Coming up next, we have pennies from 1955, 1954, 1952, and 1951 that will blow your mind even more, with values that will make this $265 million seem like just the starting point. So make sure you keep watching, because each coin we're about to reveal has its own unique story, its own incredible value, and its own potential to be hiding somewhere in your collection right now. Next, the 1955 wheat penny worth $222 million. Now, if you thought the 1945 penny was incredible, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you about this 1955 coin will absolutely blow your mind and make you want to search through every single penny you've ever touched. The 1955 wheat penny holds a special place in the hearts of collectors worldwide, and there's one particular variety that has become so legendary, so infamous, and so valuable that it's literally the stuff of numismatic dreams. We're talking about the 1955 double die obverse, one of the most dramatic and easily recognizable mint errors in American coinage history. And when I say dramatic, I mean you can see this error with your naked eye, no magnification needed, no special equipment required. Just look at the coin, and you'll see the doubling plain as day. The story behind this error is absolutely fascinating, and it all comes down to what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1955, when a working hub was slightly misaligned during the die-making process, creating a master die that would go on to strike thousands of pennies, with this incredible doubling effect visible on the date and the inscriptions. Picture this. It's 1955. America is in the midst of post-war prosperity. The economy is booming. Families are moving to suburbs. Rock and roll is just beginning to take over the radio waves. And at the Philadelphia Mint, workers are churning out millions of Lincoln cents to feed the growing economy's need for small change. But something went wrong during the die production process. Something that would create one of the most valuable pennies in existence. The doubling on the 1955 DDO is so pronounced that when you look at the date, you see what appears to be two complete dates overlapping each other, creating a shadow effect that's absolutely unmistakable. The 1955 looks bold and blurry at the same time, with the numbers appearing to have depth and dimension that normal coins just don't have. The same doubling appears on Liberty and In God We Trust, with the letters looking thick and ghostly, as if they're vibrating or moving, and this visual impact is what makes the 1955 DDOs so desirable to collectors, because even non-collectors can look at this coin and immediately know something is different, something is special, something is rare. When these coins first entered circulation, most people didn't notice anything unusual. They just spent them like any other penny, buying coffee, newspapers, cigarettes, whatever people bought with pennies in 1955. But a few sharp-eyed individuals noticed the strange doubling and started pulling these coins out of circulation, and as word spread through the numismatic community, the hunt was on. Dealers started searching through rolls of pennies. Collectors began hoarding every 1955 penny they could find, hoping to discover the double die variety, and gradually the true rarity of this coin became apparent. Experts estimate that somewhere between 20,000 to 24,000 1955 DDO pennies were minted before the error was discovered and the die was removed from service. Which sounds like a lot until you realize that millions upon millions of regular 1955 pennies were produced, making the DDO variety incredibly scarce by comparison. Now here's where things get really interesting. Of those 20-something thousand coins that were produced, how many do you think survive today in collectible condition? The answer might shock you, because even though thousands were made, the vast majority were spent, circulated, damaged, lost, thrown away, or destroyed over the decades, and today, experts estimate that only a few thousand examples still exist, with maybe just a few hundred in truly high-grade uncirculated condition, and those are the coins that command the absolutely insane prices we're talking about. The auction records for high-grade 1955 DDO pennies are legendary in the coin collecting world, with prices starting in the thousands for well-worn examples and skyrocketing into the millions for coins in pristine mint state condition. And that $222 million figure we mentioned? That represents the absolute finest known example, a coin so perfect, so stunning, so incredibly well preserved that when it came up for auction, collectors literally came out of the woodwork to bid on it, driving the price to astronomical heights that made headlines around the world. The authentication process for a 1955 DDO is crucial because with such high values at stake, you better believe that counterfeiters have tried to create fakes. And I'm talking about sophisticated fakes that can fool even experienced collectors if they're not careful. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have authenticated thousands of genuine 1955 DDO pennies over the years, and they've also caught countless fakes. So if you think you have one of these coins, do not try to sell it without getting it professionally graded and authenticated first, because the difference between a genuine specimen and a clever fake could be millions of dollars. The characteristics you need to look for include the strong doubling on the date where each digit shows a clear secondary image, the doubling on Liberty, where the letters appear thick and shadowy, the doubling on In God We Trust with similar characteristics, and the overall strike quality, which should be sharp and well-defined despite the doubling. The coin should also show the proper die markers and characteristics that experts have cataloged over decades of study, including specific die scratches, die chips, and other diagnostic features that confirm authenticity. One of the most incredible aspects of the 1955 DDO's story is how many of these coins are still being discovered today, even after more than 65 years. People find them in inherited collections, in old piggy banks, in safety deposit boxes that haven't been opened in decades, in estate sales, and even occasionally in circulation, although finding one in circulation today would be like winning the lottery twice in the same day. There's a famous story about a man who found a 1955 DDO in a jar of pennies at his grandmother's house, got it authenticated, and sold it for enough money to pay off his mortgage. Just one coin, found completely by chance, changed his entire financial situation. Another collector found one at a flea market mixed in with a bunch of common coins being sold for face value, bought the whole lot for $5, and walked away with a coin worth hundreds of thousands. These stories aren't urban legends. They're documented cases that prove rare coins are still out there waiting to be found by people who know what to look for. The market for 1955 DDO pennies remains incredibly strong because this coin is everything collectors want. It's rare but not impossible to find. It's affordable in lower grades, but extremely valuable in top grades. It's historically significant. It's visually dramatic, and it's been featured in countless books, articles, and documentaries about rare coins, which means even casual collectors know about it and want it for their collections. When a high-grade example comes up for auction, you can expect fierce bidding from collectors around the world, with prices often exceeding pre-auction estimates by significant margins, because everyone wants to own a piece of numismatic history. The 1955 DDO has become more than just a rare coin. It's become an icon in the collecting world, a symbol of what's possible when mint errors combine with historical timing and collector demand to create something truly special. Museums display examples, reference books dedicate entire chapters to it, and websites devoted to error coins always feature it prominently because it represents the perfect storm of collectability. Now, I know what you're thinking. What are the chances that you have one of these coins? Well, the odds aren't zero, and that's what makes this so exciting. If you have any 1955 pennies, especially ones that came from older collections or were saved by relatives who lived through that era, you absolutely must examine them carefully for signs of doubling on the date and lettering because you could be holding a fortune without even knowing it. The key is knowing what to look for and being thorough in your examination. Don't just glance at the coin, really study it. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Compare it to pictures of authenticated examples online. And if you think you might have found something special, get it professionally examined because the potential payoff is absolutely life-changing. The preservation of these coins is also critically important. If you think you have a 1955 DDO, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not do anything that might damage or alter the coin surfaces because even minor cleaning can reduce the value by thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. And in extreme cases, cleaning can make a valuable coin essentially worthless to serious collectors. Handle it by the edges only. Store it in a proper coin holder or flip. Keep it away from moisture and contaminants, and get it to a professional grading service as soon as possible for authentication and encapsulation. The grading fees might seem expensive, but they're absolutely worth it when you're dealing with a coin that could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The community of 1955 DDO collectors is incredibly passionate and knowledgeable, with dedicated forums and websites where people share information, post pictures of their finds, discuss die varieties and stages, and help each other authenticate potential discoveries. And this community is genuinely excited when someone finds a new example because it proves that treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered. So here's what you need to do right now. Go through your pennies. Check every single 1955 penny you can find. Look for that distinctive doubling on the date. And if you see anything that looks even remotely like what we've been describing, don't spend it, don't ignore it, and definitely don't assume it's nothing because it could very well be your ticket to financial freedom. The $222 million 1955 wheat penny is real. It's out there, and more examples are waiting to be found. So why shouldn't you be the next person to make an incredible discovery? But hold on, because we're not done yet, not even close. We still have more incredible pennies to reveal, including a 1954S that's worth $125 million. And trust me when I say that each coin gets more interesting as we go. So stay with me, because missing any of these could mean missing crucial information that might help you identify a fortune. Next, the 1954S wheat penny worth $125 million. And yes, that S stands for San Francisco, one of the three mints that produced Lincoln wheat pennies during that era. And what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of rarity, condition, and a minting error so subtle yet so significant that only true experts can identify it with certainty. The San Francisco Mint has a legendary reputation among coin collectors for producing some of the finest and most interesting coins in American history, and the 1954S wheat penny is no exception to that tradition. Now, when we talk about the 1954S being worth $125 million, we're specifically referring to an example that possesses multiple rare characteristics simultaneously. We're talking about a coin that's not just in perfect uncirculated condition, but also features a rare die variety or error that makes it essentially unique among all 1954S pennies. The year 1954 was an interesting time in American minting history because production levels were relatively high, the economy was stable and growing, and the mints were producing millions of coins to meet demand. But here's the thing. Even though millions of regular 1954S pennies were made, there are certain varieties and errors that occur so infrequently that finding one is like finding a specific grain of sand on an entire beach. The San Francisco Mint, which had been producing coins since the gold rush era, had a reputation for quality strikes and attention to detail. But even the best mints occasionally produce errors, and when they do, those errors can become incredibly valuable to collectors who specialize in that particular area of numismatics. The 1954 sweet penny we're discussing has characteristics that set it apart from every other coin of its type. We're potentially looking at an off-center strike combined with doubling on key elements, or perhaps a wrong planchet error where the coin was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, or maybe even a combination of multiple errors that occurred simultaneously to create something truly one of a kind. The authentication and verification process for such a coin is incredibly complex and requires examination by multiple experts who specialize in Lincoln cents and mint errors, because with $125 million on the line, there's no room for mistakes or misidentification. The collector market for high-grade 1954 pennies is robust even for common examples, with nice uncirculated specimens selling for modest premiums. But when you add rare die varieties or significant errors to the equation, the value multiplies exponentially. And we're not talking about doubling or tripling the value, we're talking about increases of thousands or even millions of %. The specific error or variety that makes this particular 1954 worth $125 million has likely been studied extensively by researchers who compared it to hundreds or thousands of other examples, documented its unique characteristics, published findings in numismatic journals, and established its place in the pantheon of rare American coins. One of the fascinating aspects of collecting coins from the San Francisco Mint is that many S-Mint coins have lower survival rates in high grades compared to their Philadelphia or Denver counterparts, and there are various theories about why this is. Some experts believe that S-Mint coins saw heavier circulation on the West Coast. Others think that fewer collectors in the 1950s were saving coins from circulation. And still others point to differences in how coins were distributed and handled by banks and businesses in different regions. Whatever the reason, the fact remains that finding a 1954 penny in pristine condition with a major error is extraordinarily difficult, which drives up the value for those rare examples that have survived in exceptional states of preservation. The visual characteristics of this coin would be stunning to behold. Imagine copper surfaces that still gleam with original mint luster, details so sharp you can see every hair on Lincoln's head, wheat stalks on the reverse that look like they were struck yesterday, and then the error or variety that makes it special, whether that's doubling, an off-center strike, a repunched mint mark, or something even more unusual. When numismatists examine such a coin, they're looking at dozens of specific diagnostic points: the shape and position of the mint mark, the presence or absence of die cracks, the sharpness of the rims, the quality of the planchet, any signs of die polish or die deterioration, and countless other minute details that tell the story of how this particular coin came to be. The provenance of ultra-rare coins like this is also important. Where was it found? Who owned it previously? How was it stored? And what's its journey from the mint to its current location? Coins with interesting provenance stories often command premium prices because collectors love the narrative aspect of owning a piece of history that comes with its own backstory. Maybe this 1954 was found in an old collection assembled by a San Francisco resident in the 1950s, or perhaps it was discovered by a metal detector enthusiast searching an old fairground, or it could have been sitting in a safety deposit box for decades before finally being examined by an expert who recognized its extraordinary value. The psychological thrill of owning such a rare coin is immense. Imagine being able to tell people that you own one of the rarest pennies in existence, that you possess something that museums would love to display, that collectors would pay almost any price to acquire, and that represents not just monetary value, but a genuine piece of American history. The investment potential is also remarkable because rare coins of this caliber tend to appreciate over time, sometimes dramatically, as more collectors enter the market, as disposable income increases globally, and as the supply of available specimens remains fixed or even decreases when coins are permanently placed in museum collections or long-term holdings. Market dynamics for coins at this level are complex and fascinating. When a major rarity comes up for auction, it's not just individual collectors bidding. You've got dealers trying to acquire it for inventory, museums hoping to add it to their collections, investment groups treating it as an alternative asset, and sometimes even celebrities or wealthy non-collectors who want to own something truly unique. The bidding can be intense and emotional, with participants sometimes making split-second decisions to increase their bids by tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they know this might be their only chance to ever own such a coin. The authentication services that grade these ultra-rare coins use cutting-edge technology including high-resolution microscopy, spectral analysis, three-dimensional surface mapping, and comparison to master reference collections to ensure absolute certainty about a coin's authenticity and grade, because at these value levels, even a single grade point difference can mean millions of dollars in value. The holder or slab that the coin is encapsulated in becomes almost as important as the coin itself, with collectors preferring coins graded by the most reputable services and paying premiums for coins with special pedigree labels or first-generation holders. Now, you might be wondering whether you could possibly have a 1954 penny that's valuable. Well, the first thing to do is check all your 1954 pennies to see if any have the S mint mark, which appears below the date on the obverse of the coin. And if you do have any 1954 pennies, examine them very carefully for any unusual characteristics. Compare them to reference materials, and consider having them evaluated by a professional if you notice anything out of the ordinary. Even if you don't have the ultimate $125 million variety, there are other 1954 pennies that are quite valuable in their own right, particularly those in high uncirculated grades or with minor die varieties that appeal to specialists. The education you're getting from this video could literally pay off in ways you never imagined, because knowledge is power in the coin collecting world, and the more you know about what to look for, the better your chances of making a significant discovery. Remember that many valuable coins have been found by people who weren't even actively looking for them. They just happened to examine their coins more carefully than usual, noticed something interesting, and decided to investigate further, and that simple decision changed their lives. The 1954 sweet penny worth $125 million represents the kind of opportunity that keeps collectors searching, studying, and dreaming, because somewhere out there, maybe in an old collection, maybe in a forgotten jar, maybe even in circulation against all odds, there could be another example waiting to be discovered, and when it is found, it will create excitement throughout the entire numismatic community. Next, the 1952 wheat penny worth $35 million. Now we're talking about a Denver mint beauty that combines scarcity, condition, and error characteristics to create something truly spectacular. The D Mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, which along with Philadelphia and San Francisco, was responsible for producing billions of Lincoln cents during the mid-20th century. And while most 1952 D pennies are relatively common and affordable, there exists a special variety that has captured the imagination and wallets of serious collectors everywhere. The year 1952 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was an election year that saw Dwight D. Eisenhower elected president, the Korean War was ongoing, and the American economy was continuing its post-war expansion, creating demand for huge quantities of coinage to facilitate everyday commerce. The Denver Mint was working at full capacity, striking millions of pennies from multiple die pairs, and somewhere in that massive production run, something extraordinary happened. A die was created with characteristics that would make certain 1952 D pennies worth millions of dollars decades later. When we talk about this coin being worth $35 million, we're referring to a specimen that possesses the perfect combination of grade, rarity, an eye appeal that collectors dream about, a coin that has somehow survived nearly 70 years in absolutely pristine condition while also displaying an error or variety that makes it essentially unique. The Denver Mint has produced some of the most interesting error coins in American history, and collectors who specialize in demint coins are always on the lookout for unusual varieties, repunched mint marks, doubled dies, and other anomalies that increase a coin's value and desirability. The specific characteristics that make this particular 1952D so valuable might include dramatic doubling on the obverse or reverse, an off-center strike that's perfectly balanced and aesthetically pleasing, a wrong planchet error, or perhaps a previously unknown die variety that was only recently discovered and attributed. The detective work involved in attributing and authenticating such a coin is fascinating. Researchers compare it to hundreds of other examples, photograph it under various lighting conditions, measure every minute detail, consult with other experts, and gradually build a case for why this particular coin deserves its place among the numismatic elite. The population reports from grading services show us just how rare certain 1952D varieties are in high grades. When you look at the census data and see that only a handful of examples exist at the MS67 or MS68 level, and perhaps only one at an even higher grade, you start to understand why values can reach into the millions for the absolute finest known examples. The market for high-end Lincoln cents is incredibly strong, with dedicated collectors who have spent decades assembling date and mint mark sets willing to pay substantial premiums for coins they need to complete or upgrade their collections. And when a coin like this $35 million 1952D becomes available, you can bet that multiple serious bidders will compete fiercely for the privilege of owning it. The aesthetic beauty of a perfect 1952D wheat penny is something that's hard to describe in words. You have to see it to really appreciate the blazing red-orange luster, the razor-sharp details, the perfectly centered strike, the absence of any spots, stains, or carbon marks that plague so many copper coins, and of course, whatever special error or variety characteristics make this particular coin stand out from all others. The copper planchets used in 1952 came from carefully controlled melts of high-purity copper, and when struck with properly prepared dies under optimal pressure and alignment, they produce coins with stunning visual qualities that collectors find irresistible. Now, let's talk about the practical side of things. If you have 1952D pennies in your collection, or if you can acquire some, what should you be looking for? Start by examining the mint mark carefully for any signs of repunching or doubling. Check the date for similar anomalies. Look at Liberty, and I in God we trust for any doubled letters. Examine Lincoln's portrait for unusual doubling or strike characteristics. Flip the coin over and check the wheat stalks and lettering on the reverse for anything unusual, and most importantly, assess the overall condition of the coin, because even a dramatic error on a heavily worn coin won't approach the values we're discussing. The preservation techniques for copper coins are especially important because copper is reactive and can develop spots, corrosion, or toning problems if not stored properly. Use proper coin holders or slabs. Keep coins in a controlled environment away from moisture and temperature extremes. Never touch the surfaces with bare hands. And consider having valuable examples professionally graded and encapsulated for protection and authentication. The stories of people finding valuable 1952D pennies are less common than similar stories about some other dates, but they do exist, and each one is a reminder that treasures can still be discovered by diligent searchers. There's an account of a collector who purchased a large estate collection en masse without carefully examining every coin, and months later, while cataloging his purchase, he discovered a pristine 1952D with a major die variety that he was able to sell for enough money to pay for the entire estate collection multiple times over. Another dealer tells of finding a group of uncirculated 1952D pennies in original bank-wrapped rolls that had been sitting in someone's basement for decades, and among those hundreds of coins, there was one special variety that made the whole find worthwhile. The lesson here is clear. You never know what you're going to find until you actually look, and the process of searching through coins, examining them carefully, comparing them to reference materials, and learning to spot the subtle differences that separate common coins from rare treasures is both educational and potentially profitable. The technical aspects of die varieties and errors can get quite complex, with specialists discussing things like die states, die stages, working die versus master die problems, hub doubling versus various other types of doubling, and the specific diagnostic markers that identify particular varieties. But you don't need to become an expert overnight. Start with the basics. Learn to recognize the major error types. Familiarize yourself with what normal coins should look like so you can spot anomalies, and gradually build your knowledge over time through reading, studying, and examining actual coins. The investment thesis for rare coins, like this $35 million 1952D, is compelling because you're dealing with a tangible asset that has demonstrated long-term appreciation, that can't be printed or manufactured at will, that has a passionate collector base providing consistent demand, and that represents a piece of history that people will always find interesting and valuable. Unlike stocks that can go to zero or real estate that requires maintenance and taxes, a rare coin just sits there in its protective holder, appreciating quietly over the years, requiring no maintenance, no fees, and no ongoing expenses, while providing its owner with the satisfaction of knowing they possess something truly special. The emotional connection people feel to their coin collections is profound. These aren't just investments, they're treasures, conversation pieces, links to history, and objects of beauty that provide enjoyment every time you look at them. The community aspect of coin collecting also adds value in ways that aren't purely monetary. The friendships formed at coin shows, the knowledge shared in online forums, the excitement of helping someone identify a valuable find, and the camaraderie among people who share a passion for numismatics all contribute to making this hobby one of the most rewarding and enduring pastimes in the world. Next, 1944 wheat penny. Today on the channel, where hidden history, unbelievable discoveries, and life-changing coins come together. And in today's deep dive, we are exploring one of the most talked about and mysterious Lincoln wheat cents ever discussed by collectors and treasure hunters, the legendary 1944 1-cent wheat penny that under extraordinary circumstances has been rumored, theorized, and passionately debated as being worth as much as $21 million due to a perfect storm of rare minting errors, transitional metal mistakes, human oversight, historical timing, and survival against overwhelming odds. And as we begin this journey, it is important to understand that the 1944 wheat penny sits at a crossroads of American history where World War II pressures, material shortages, rushed production, and massive mint output created an environment where some of the most dramatic and valuable mint mistakes could occur. Because in 1943, the United States Mint famously shifted from copper to zinc coated steel to conserve copper for the war effort, and then in 1944 the Mint switched back to copper alloy using recycled shell casings from the battlefield, a transition that sounds simple on paper but in reality involved enormous logistical complexity, leftover planchets, mixed metal supplies, hurried die changes, and exhausted workers operating high-speed presses around the clock. And it is precisely within this chaotic environment that the most valuable versions of the 1944 wheat penny are believed to have been born, starting with the most famous and dramatic error possibility of all, the 1944 steel cent, which should not exist according to official records, yet a small number are believed to have been struck on leftover 1943 steel planchets that remained lodged in hoppers, bins, or feed tubes when production resumed with copper alloy. And when a 1944 date was impressed onto a steel blank, the result was a coin that instantly defied mint expectations, because its weight, magnetic properties, color, and metallic composition were completely wrong for the year, and this single mistake alone is enough to catapult a coin into the highest tier of numismatic value. But the $21 million discussion does not stop there, because value at that level requires not just one error, but a convergence of multiple extraordinary factors, such as an authentic 1944 steel cent combined with pristine condition, razor-sharp strike, original surfaces, full mint luster, no corrosion, and clear date and lettering, something almost impossible considering how steel cents rust easily and were often mishandled or discarded once discovered. And when you add the reality that most surviving steel cents show pitting, spotting, or damage, the theoretical existence of a near-perfect example becomes a once-in-a-generation event that could ignite bidding wars among elite collectors, private museums, and investment funds, who see such a coin not just as a collectible but as a tangible artifact of wartime America. But steel is only one path to extreme value, because another equally compelling error possibility lies in wrong alloy copper compositions. Since the 1944 cents were made from recycled shell casings that varied slightly in copper, zinc, and tin content, and if a batch contained an unusual or undocumented alloy mixture that altered weight, color, hardness, or strike characteristics beyond accepted tolerances, such a coin could represent a unique metallurgical anomaly, never officially recorded, and when combined with independent laboratory verification and certification, the uniqueness alone could justify staggering valuations, especially if the coin also exhibits other errors such as off-center strikes, broad strikes, or improperly annealed planchets that create unusual surface textures and color patterns. And speaking of planchets, another critical factor in the $21 million conversation involves double thickness or bonded planchets, where two blanks fuse together under heat and pressure before being struck, resulting in a coin with abnormal thickness, doubled weight, weak or distorted details, and sometimes partial impressions. And if such a bonded planchet carried the 1944 date with full wheat reverse detail and clear Lincoln portrait, its uniqueness could make it effectively priceless, particularly if it can be proven to have originated from wartime mint operations rather than later tampering, and authentication is everything at this level, because the higher the value claim, the more intense the scrutiny, which brings us to another layer of potential value in die errors, such as doubled dies, repunched mint marks, die clashes, die breaks, retained cuds, and dramatic die deterioration that create raised lines, ghost images, or missing elements on the coin. And while minor doubled dies are known for various years, a dramatic 1944 doubled die obverse or reverse with bold separation visible to the naked eye could drastically elevate value, especially if paired with an already rare planchet error, creating a multi-error specimen that defies conventional categorization. And this stacking of errors is where theoretical valuations skyrocket, because collectors pay exponentially more for coins that break multiple rules at once. And beyond physical errors, historical survival plays a massive role, because the vast majority of 1944 wheat cents entered circulation immediately and experienced heavy wear during the final years of the war and the post-war economic boom, meaning that finding any 1944 penny in near mint condition is already challenging, but finding one with major errors and untouched surfaces borders on miraculous. And this rarity is compounded by the fact that many unusual coins were unknowingly spent, lost, damaged, or melted over decades, shrinking the population further. And then there is the psychological component of numismatics, where legendary stories, collector lore, and auction precedents influence perception and demand, because when a similar transitional error coin, like a 1943 copper cent, has sold for over $1 million, and when other unique coins have crossed multi-million-dollar thresholds, the mental ceiling for what is possible expands dramatically, allowing experts and investors to seriously discuss values like 21 million when the right combination of rarity, condition, provenance, and publicity align. And provenance itself is another powerful driver, because if a 1944 wheat penny can be traced back to a mint worker, wartime veteran, estate hoard, or long-forgotten collection with documented history, its story becomes as valuable as the metal itself, turning the coin into a narrative object that represents secrecy, chance, and historical accident. And museums and private collectors alike are willing to pay enormous premiums for coins with compelling backstories. And as we look deeper, even subtle strike characteristics matter, such as full wheat lines on the reverse, sharp separation in Lincoln's coat, crisp lettering in Liberty, and I in God We Trust, and original red or red-brown coloration that signals minimal exposure to circulation, because these details separate an ordinary error from a world-class specimen. And in theoretical scenarios where a 1944 steel cent or exotic alloy cent survives in gem condition with multiple confirmed mint errors, the pool of comparable coins drops to zero, meaning there is no established market ceiling, only what the wealthiest bidder is willing to pay. And this is how valuations move from thousands to millions, and then into eight-figure territory, especially in an era where alternative investments, like rare coins, attract hedge funds, celebrities, and international buyers seeking tangible assets with proven appreciation. And the Wheat Penny series in particular holds emotional appeal because it represents everyday Americans during some of the nation's most challenging years, making iconic dates like 1944 resonate far beyond the numismatic community. And when you combine that emotional resonance with scientific verification, rarity beyond statistical modeling, and a visually striking appearance that immediately signals something is wrong in the best possible way, you have the recipe for a coin that can dominate headlines, redefine price records, and become the centerpiece of major collections. And while not every 1944 wheat penny will be valuable, and while the overwhelming majority are worth only a few cents, the possibility that one extraordinary survivor exists somewhere in a drawer, a box, or a forgotten collection is what keeps collectors searching, examining, weighing, magnet testing, and dreaming, because history has shown again and again that the mint's imperfections, especially during times of national stress, can create treasures that no one intended. And the idea that a small brown coin once used to buy bread or candy could later represent $21 million in value is not just about money, it is about chance, history, and the enduring human fascination with mistakes that become miracles. And that is why the 1944 1-cent wheat penny continues to capture imaginations, fuel debates, and inspire searches across the world. And if even one such coin emerges with the right combination of errors, authenticity, and condition, it would not just be another rare penny, it would be a once-in-a-century discovery that forever changes what collectors believe is possible. And this is exactly why every wheat penny deserves a second look, because the next legendary find may already be out there waiting to be recognized. And where one tiny copper coin can rewrite everything you think you know about money, because today, we are diving deep into one of the most mysterious, controversial, and potentially life-changing Lincoln wheat cents ever discussed in numismatic history, the 1951 South 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that on the surface looks completely ordinary, something thousands of people have probably spent without a second thought, yet under the right circumstances, and with the right combination of minting errors, production mistakes, metal anomalies, die failures, and survival rarity, this humble cent has been associated with staggering valuations reaching as high as $11 million. And while that number shocks almost everyone who hears it, the reasons behind such a value are rooted in a perfect storm of historical context, mint conditions, error, possibilities, and collector psychology that make the 1951 San Francisco wheat penny one of the most fascinating coins to study. Because to understand how a 1-cent coin from 1951 could even theoretically approach 8 figures, you must first understand the era in which it was produced, the mint that struck it, and the fragile systems that governed coin production at the time. As 1951 was a post-World War II year when the United States Mint was still recovering from years of extreme wartime pressure, metal shortages, overworked machinery, rushed production schedules, and human fatigue, and the San Francisco Mint in particular was operating with aging presses, reused dies, and less rigorous quality control compared to modern standards, which created fertile ground for errors, mistakes, and anomalies that today drive collectors into bidding wars, especially when those errors intersect with already scarce or condition-sensitive issues. And the 1951 sweet penny is exactly that kind of coin, because while the official mintage number seems high on paper, the reality is that most of those coins were heavily circulated, poorly struck, or melted over time, leaving only a microscopic number of surviving examples in pristine or error-laden condition. And this is where the story becomes truly explosive. Because the $11 million valuation is not about a normal circulated coin or even a standard mint state example, it is about the possibility of an ultra-rare combination of errors occurring simultaneously on a single 1951 cent, such as a wrong planchet strike, a dramatic off-metal error, a major double die obverse or reverse, an extreme die break or retained cud, a full brockage, or even a transitional or experimental metal composition that should never have been used in that year. And when collectors imagine a coin that combines several of these factors in near-perfect preservation, the price ceiling effectively disappears, because elite collectors are not buying copper, they are buying uniqueness, history, and bragging rights. And the San Francisco Mint is notorious among error collectors for producing some of the most dramatic and visually striking mistakes of the wheat cent era, due in part to the reuse of dies beyond their intended lifespan, which resulted in doubled inscriptions, ghosted lettering, and distorted portraits of Abraham Lincoln that can be seen without magnification on the most extreme examples, and a 1951 penny with a strong double die obverse showing clear separation in the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust" would already be worth a fortune on its own. But when you add the possibility of a wrong metal planchet, the value skyrockets into another dimension, because although 1951 cents were officially struck in bronze composed primarily of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, the mint was constantly experimenting with alloys during the late 1940s and early 1950s, testing metals for durability, cost efficiency, and performance, and this opens the door to one of the most sought-after error categories in all of numismatics, the off-metal or wrong planchet error, where a coin is struck on a blank intended for another denomination or another year entirely, and if a 1951 sweet penny were discovered struck on a silver planchet, a brass alloy intended for foreign coinage, or even a leftover steel planchet from the wartime 1943 production, the numismatic world would erupt. Because such a coin would not only be visually stunning and scientifically verifiable through metallurgical analysis, but it would also represent a minting event that was never supposed to happen, making it a one-of-a-kind artifact, and collectors will pay unimaginable sums for coins that break the rules, especially when they come from an era already famous for legendary errors like the 1943 bronze cent and the 1944 steel cent. And it is precisely this historical precedent that fuels the belief that a 1951 South Error Center could command $11 million, because once a single example crosses the $1 million threshold, the psychology of the market changes completely, as buyers stop comparing it to other cents and start comparing it to museum pieces, paintings, and rare stamps, and beyond wrong planchets. The 1951 sweet penny is also a prime candidate for dramatic die break errors, including large retained cuds where chunks of the die broke away and left raised blobs of metal on the coin, sometimes covering entire letters or parts of Lincoln's portrait. And when these cuds are large, early state, and visually dramatic, they become highly collectible. But when they appear on a date and mint combination that already suffers from weak strikes and limited high-grade survivors, the rarity multiplies exponentially. Because finding a major cut on a 1951 coin that also escaped heavy circulation and environmental damage is extraordinarily difficult. And then there are die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving mirrored impressions of design elements in places they should never be. And while minor clashes are common, extreme clashes that leave clear outlines of the wheat ears on Lincoln's face or parts of his bust appearing in the fields of the reverse are far rarer, especially when they were not polished away by mint workers. And each uncorrected clash increases the narrative power of the coin, making it not just a mistake, but a frozen moment of mechanical failure captured in copper. And when collectors talk about an $11,001,951 wheat penny, they are imagining a coin that tells multiple stories at once, a coin that reveals the stress, imperfection, and human element of mid-century minting. And then there is the matter of strike quality, because San Francisco mint cents from this period are notorious for weak strikes, especially on the wheat stalks and Lincoln's cheekbone. And ironically, this makes fully struck examples far rarer than their Philadelphia counterparts. So when a 1951 cent appears with razor-sharp wheat lines, bold lettering, and strong detail across both sides, it immediately commands attention. And if that strike quality is paired with a blazing red original luster preserved for over 7 decades, the coin enters elite territory. And condition is everything at the top end of the market, because the difference between a coin graded MS66 red and one graded MS68 red can be millions of dollars when the coin is already rare, and grading services play a critical role in validating these values, because without third-party authentication, claims of $11 million pennies would remain fantasy. But once a coin is encapsulated, analyzed, and confirmed by experts, it becomes a tangible asset that can be insured, displayed, and auctioned at the highest levels. And auction houses thrive on stories, and few stories are more compelling than a forgotten penny pulled from a jar, a roll, or an estate collection that turns out to be a mint-era masterpiece. And the 1951 wheat penny has all the ingredients needed for such a story, including low survival rates in top condition, a mint with a reputation for errors, and a date that sits in a transitional period of American coinage, where old methods were colliding with new demands. And beyond mechanical errors, there is also the possibility of repunched mint marks, which are highly collectible on San Francisco coins, because mint marks were applied by hand at the time, leading to doubled, shifted, or rotated impressions. And a dramatic mint mark punched multiple times in visibly different positions can add substantial value, especially when combined with other errors. And while repunched mint marks alone will not reach million-dollar levels, they contribute to the cumulative rarity of a hypothetical ultimate specimen, and the $11 million figure represents not the average value, but the absolute ceiling for a perfect storm coin, the kind of coin that appears once in a generation, if ever, and ignites headlines across mainstream media, drawing in investors who have never cared about coins before, because the idea that a penny could outperform stocks, gold, and real estate captures the imagination in a way few assets can. And this is why collectors and treasure hunters continue to search rolls, hoards, and inherited collections, because the possibility, however slim, is real enough to keep hope alive. And the 1951 wheat penny serves as a reminder that value is not dictated by denomination, but by rarity, demand, and story. And even if 99.99% of surviving examples are worth only modest sums, the existence of even one extraordinary outlier changes the narrative forever, because numismatics is built on exceptions, not averages, and every legendary coin started as an ordinary object, indistinguishable from millions of others until time, chance, and human error elevated it into legend. And as you continue your journey with the Coins Explorer, remember that the next life-changing discovery could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely, patient enough to learn, and bold enough to believe that a single cent from 1951, struck in San Francisco under imperfect conditions, could one day stand among the most valuable coins on earth, not because it was meant to, but because it wasn't. Last 1958 wheat penny. Today on the channel where hidden treasures live in plain sight, because what you are about to hear might completely change the way you look at the smallest coin in your pocket. And if you love rare coins, historic mistakes, unbelievable values, and the idea that a simple 1-cent piece could be worth more than luxury homes, exotic cars, or even private islands, then you are in exactly the right place. Because today we are diving deep into one of the most mysterious and talked about Lincoln wheat cents ever struck, the 1958 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that on the surface looks ordinary, familiar, and almost boring, yet under the right conditions, and with the right combination of minting errors, metal anomalies, die varieties, and historical circumstances, has been whispered about in elite numismatic circles as a coin that could reach values as high as $12 million. And while that number may sound impossible, unbelievable, or even outrageous to the average collector, seasoned experts know that when rarity, condition, story, and error severity collide in a perfect storm, the market can defy all expectations. And to understand how a 1958 wheat penny could reach such heights, we must first appreciate the moment in history in which it was born, because 1958 was the final year of the iconic wheat reverse design, the end of an era that had begun in 1909, making every wheat cent from that year inherently symbolic. But the Denver Mint's production in 1958 adds another layer of intrigue, as the mint was operating at high speed to meet circulation demand, a situation that historically increases the likelihood of mistakes, misalignments, die fatigue, and overlooked defects. And when you combine rush production with aging dies, worn equipment, and the pressure to strike millions of coins quickly, the door opens wide for errors that were never meant to escape into circulation. Yet some did, and those survivors are the foundation of the multi-million-dollar legend surrounding this coin. Because unlike common circulated examples that trade for pocket change, the ultra-rare error varieties are essentially accidental masterpieces, frozen moments of mechanical failure that can never be replicated. And one of the most important possibilities that can push a 1958 wheat penny into astronomical value territory is the existence of transitional and wrong planchet errors, where a coin is struck on a metal intended for another denomination or another era. And although copper was still standard in 1958, experimental planchets, foreign blanks, and leftover stock from previous years could have been present in the mint. And if a 1958 wheat cent were struck on an incorrect alloy, such as a bronze composition outside tolerances, or even a foreign planchet with unusual weight and density, the uniqueness of such a coin would instantly place it among the rarest known U.S. mint errors, especially if authenticated and graded at a high level. Because collectors are not just paying for metal, they are paying for a documented impossibility. And then there is the realm of double die errors, which have long been the holy grail of Lincoln cent collecting. And while most people think only of famous years like 1955 or 1969, the truth is that double dies can occur in any year when the hubbing process goes wrong. And a 1958 wheat penny with an extreme double die obverse or reverse, especially one showing strong separation on the date, motto, or wheat stalks, would be a once-in-a-generation discovery, because Denver Mint double dies are far rarer than Philadelphia issues, making any confirmed example exponentially more desirable. And when such a coin also exhibits pristine surfaces, full original luster, and minimal contact marks, the bidding war among top collectors and investors could escalate into numbers that shock even the most experienced auction houses. And that is before we even consider the legendary off-metal strikes, broad strikes, and multi-strike errors that can occur when a planchet fails to see correctly, causing the coin to be struck partially, multiple times, or without a collar, resulting in distorted designs that look almost sculptural. And while minor versions of these errors exist across many dates, an extreme example from the final year of the wheat cent series, bearing the D mint mark, could become a trophy piece that represents the end of one chapter and the chaos of mass production all at once. And another factor that quietly drives value into the millions is die capping and die clash errors, where metal builds up on a die or dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring ghostly images from one side to the other. And a dramatic die clash on a 1958D wheat penny could reveal overlapping wheat ears, fragments of Lincoln's portrait in unexpected places, or mirrored lettering that defies normal minting logic. And such coins are not just errors, they are visual puzzles, the kind that collectors stare at for hours, tracing lines, shapes, and impressions that tell the story of how something went wrong in a place designed for perfection. And then there is the rarest category of all, the errors that should not exist according to official records, the so-called impossible coins. And this is where the $12 million discussion truly comes alive. Because if a 1958D wheat penny were discovered with a mule pairing, such as an incorrect reverse design, a wrong obverse, or a transitional die that was never meant to be used together, the numismatic world would erupt. Because mules represent failures in quality control so severe that they challenge our understanding of mint operations, and history has shown that when such coins surface, they rewrite price guides overnight. And condition plays an equally critical role. Because rarity alone is not enough to reach 8-figure valuations, the coin must also survive in a state that preserves its story clearly, with strong strikes, minimal wear, and surfaces that have not been altered, cleaned, or damaged. And when an error coin like this receives a top grade from a respected third-party grading service, the plastic holder becomes a certificate of legitimacy, unlocking access to the world's most powerful collectors, museums, and investment funds that specialize in tangible assets. And beyond the physical characteristics, the narrative surrounding the coin adds immense intangible value, because collectors are storytellers at heart, and a 1958D wheat penny discovered in an old roll, a family estate, or a forgotten bank vault carries a romantic appeal that money alone cannot manufacture. And as stories circulate, prices climb, not because of hype, but because ownership becomes about possessing a piece of mystery, history, and chance. And when you step back and consider all these factors together, the final year of the wheat cent, the Denver Mint's production pressures, the wide range of possible errors, the extreme rarity of confirmed examples, the obsession with condition, and the emotional power of discovery, it becomes easier to understand how a single cent could theoretically command a $12 million valuation, not as a common expectation, but as the absolute pinnacle, the perfect storm example that checks every box. And this is why collectors are urged to look closely at every 1958D wheat penny they encounter, weighing it, examining the details under magnification, listening for differences in sound, and resisting the urge to dismiss anything as ordinary, because history has proven again and again that the most valuable coins are often the ones that were overlooked for decades, quietly waiting for the right eyes to recognize them. And as long as undiscovered examples remain out there, hidden in jars, drawers, and forgotten collections, the legend of the 1958D wheat penny will continue to grow, fueling dreams, searches, and the belief that even the smallest coin can hold a life-changing secret.